Hello everyone. Let's start with the current affair magazine of Vajiram and Ravi. So this is of June 2026. So I will be covering all the uh, topics like whether it is editorial, the maps, the social issues, the polity, governance, economy part separately with a dedicated video for all the topics. So for today we will be starting with the editor's cut. Okay, the first topic. Okay, so in the editor's cut category, the first topic is draft regulations for use of AI in courts 2026. So see, we do not need to learn each and every detail or memorize everything of these articles. So we should know the basic important points. Okay, like here it has been given that Supreme Court has released a draft, and it says that this draft says that AI should only be permitted for administrative and research purposes, and it prohibits its use in adjudicatory functions and judicial decision making. So the only purpose that AI should be used in judiciary uh, sector is for administrative and research purposes, not for judicial decision making. Okay, so first of all, coming to the key provisions. Okay, so this part. So what to remember from this? So remember the key points like prohibition of AI on judicial decision making, then is permitted use of AI, then is human oversight, a regulatory body, and the last we have data protection and privacy and transparency and accountability. So these are the major points. Now come to the sub points. So what to remember, like in prohibition on AI based judicial decision making. So here it is written that AI cannot be used to determine judicial outcomes, assess bail eligibility, recommend sentencing, evaluate witness credibility, and otherwise influence the adjudication of cases. So here, next point is like no personal data of any person shall be used to train, test, or refine any AI system without the prior approval of the appropriate authority or to perform the function of adjudication or sentencing in any matter without mandatory human in the loop. Then the final judicial decisions must remain the exclusive responsibility of judges and judicial officers, and AI generated outputs cannot substitute human reasoning, discretion, or judicial accountability. Okay, so the major thing that we should take from this point is that the final judicial decisions, it must remain the exclusive responsibility of judges and judicial officers. So this is the final take point. The next is the permitted uses of AI. So here it is given that AI can be used in which areas like case management, cause list preparation, hearing scheduling, then is transcription of court proceedings, then translation of judgments, then legal research, then administrative functions, including case filing assistance, defect scrutiny, record management, judicial research allocation. So see here, everything we can say that in order to organize the tasks or the day-to-day activities of the judiciary, so these AI can be used. So such tools are intended to improve efficiency and assist the judges and court staff without performing adjudicatory functions. Okay, so the next is human oversight, that is all AI assisted outputs must be subject to meaningful human review. Judges and court officials must independently verify AI generated content before relying on it. Responsibility for judicial actions and decisions cannot be delegated to AI systems. And here the major take point is any kind of output you are generating from AI, it should be subjected to human review. Just remember this point. Okay? That is, the judicial actions and decisions, their responsibilities, it cannot be delegated to AI system. What is delegation? So delegation is a transfer of authority. That is, you are transferring the authority to someone. So you can't give that authority to AI. So you are responsible for your tasks. Okay? Now, a regulatory body. So here the main, see here it has been given that yes, the regulatory body should consist of these members. So here nearly there are some about 13 members, you can count it. So there is no need to remember that who would be the member or who should be the member in this. So you should remember this point, that yes, a regulatory body should be made who will regulate, promote innovation, integration, governance, oversight, standard setting, policy development, or artificial intelligence in judiciary. So this is the main thing that you should remember, that you can write in your mains answer like, yeah, there is a need of a regulatory body. No need to remember that who should be the member in this, because it is a proposed one and there is nothing concrete in this. Next is data protection and privacy. AI tools deployed in courts must comply with applicable data protection and privacy standards. Sensitive judicial records and personal information must be protected from unauthorized access, misuse, or breaches. Adequate cybersecurity safeguards are required for AI enabled systems. So, here the only point you have to remember is we should take or ensure the data protection and privacy while dealing with AI or while implementing AI in our tasks. Okay, next, transparency and accountability. That is, courts must ensure transparency regarding the use of AI systems. AI generated output should be identifiable and capable of being audited. Appropriate mechanisms should be established to monitor the functioning of and reliability of AI tools. So there should be the maintenance of transparency and accountability. So just remember the most important point from these. No need to remember all these. Okay. The next is, so what was the rationale behind these restrictions? So why it was restricted only for like administrative functions, not any judicial decision making functions and all? Because AI, it lacks transparency. It is the first thing. Okay, so it cannot adequately explain how a particular conclusion was reached. The next is, judicial decisions making requires contextual understanding, constitutional values, empathy, and application of legal principles that AI cannot replicate. This is the human factor or the human behavior, we can say. So this will be lacking while using AI. The next is, generative AI tools may produce inaccurate or fabricated information, posing risks to the administration of justice. The next is, judicial accountability must remain with human judges rather than automated systems. Of course, to ensure these constitutional values, empathy, application of legal principles, and all. So just remember that. Okay, so why it is restricted to only administrative functions? That is, lacks transparency and human factor. This is the same point only. This two and four, to number 3 and 5. The next is, generative AI tools, they may produce inaccurate or fabricated information. Okay. Now coming to the next point. So the last point is the significance and way forward. So now here you have to remember that we should take a balanced technological use approach. Okay, a balanced approach. Okay, because it is a technology, we have to take its merits as well as we have to deal with its demerits. Now what are the significance? If we first, here it is saying that what are the significance, what is the significance if we restrict the use of AI in judicial functions, that is only to administrative uses, not decision making. So what is its significance? That is, there can be a responsible use of AI, then the principles of natural justice and due process of law can be ensured, then judicial independence should be reinforced by ensuring that adjudicatory functions remain exclusively human, aligns India with emerging global approaches that permit AI as a supporting tool while restricting its role in judicial decision making. And the way forward is, we should develop ethical and operational standards for AI deployment in courts, enhance AI literacy and training for judges and court personnel, institute regular audits and oversight mechanisms for AI or tools, and ensure continued emphasis on transparency, privacy protection, and human supervision. So here you can take some 2 to 3 points, nothing more important, and you see every point has been repeated. Okay, so you have to just remember the main news in your mind or the main current affairs, that the use of AI is limited to the administrative functions and it prohibits its use in adjudicatory functions and judicial decision making. This much. So coming to the next article, that is Foreign Contribution Regulation Rules 2026. So here the news is the Ministry of Home Affairs has notified Foreign Contribution Regulation Amendment Rules 2026, which has amended Foreign Contribution Regulation Rules 2011 under 2010 Act. So what are the major important things here you should remember? Okay, so first is the Foreign Contribution Regulation has been amended. Now, what are the main important points? So the key changes are, that is, first there were broad categories. So what were the broad categories? See here, it is written here. That is, earlier we used to have economic, educational, religional, social and cultural categories. But now we have purpose specific, geographic specific and activity specific categories. Like in economic category, we have 9 sections now. Earlier, when there is some new NGO, they will register it in any of the one category, these 5 broad categories. Okay, like economy is economy, but now you have to say that economic category. Okay, then which economic category? So there are 9 sections, that is subdivisions. Okay, so now coming here, so NGO must now register for specific approved purposes. Okay, now next, this is the first important thing. The next is geographical restrictions. That is, registration certificates will specify that states or UTs where foreign funded activities may be undertaken. That is the exact state or UT where the foreign funds to be utilized. Okay, and if there are additional states or UTs, then you have to pay extra fees. Okay, for prior approval and all. The next is, here it is written about the religious activities. You have to be conscious about these all also, and here a special section has been added, that is excluding proselytization, that is foreign contributions which cannot be used for activities aimed at religious conversion. So this has been properly mentioned in this. Now the expanded definition of key functionary. So what is key functionary? Key functionary means who can run it, that is who can run the NGO and all. So these are basically the NGO stakeholders. Now here it has also been made clear about who are those, the key functionaries, like directors, trustees, partners, office bearers, karta of a Hindu undivided family. So you just keep it, take a look of it, no need to remember these all particularly. Okay, the next is associations with foreign nationals other than Indian origin, as key functionaries will ordinarily not be eligible for FCRA registration. That is, Indian origin, it's okay, you are eligible for FCRA registration. But if someone is a person who is not of Indian origin, then they are not eligible for FCRA registration or prior permission unless specifically exempted by the central government. The next is enhanced disclosure requirement. So you have to disclose each and everything, like detailed activity reports, websites and social media accounts, publications, ultimate donors, where the funds are routed through donor advised funds or intermediary funding vehicles and all. And here see another major rule or amendment is that so an association will generally be treated as having undertaken reasonable activity only if it has utilized at least 10 lakh of foreign contribution during the preceding 2 financial years. So you need to utilize the 10 lakhs during the preceding financial year. So this is not a very important thing, but here it is very important. That is, the foreign funds will be released in installments. That is, it will be released only after 75% of the previous installment have been utilized and verified through field inquiry. Like for example, an NGO has been allocated with 20 lakhs of foreign contribution fund. So first slot, the NGO will be allocated with 10 lakhs rupees, and after using 7.5 lakhs from it, that is 75%, then only it will be eligible for the second slot, that is another 10 lakh slot. Okay, and this will be given only after a proper field inquiry and all. Okay, so these are the major things. And what see, I am telling you the points which you should remember. You don't need to remember all these things. The major points, like the broad categories have been now made more divisional or specific. like this economics, education, religion, social, culture. You should know these categories. In the prelims it can come that which categories used to be existed, and um, all. Okay, so these are now specific, that is purpose specific, geographic specific, activity specific. Remember this, you can write in your means that purpose specific, geographic specific, and activity specific activities. Okay, the next you should remember that the you should try the NGOs are NGOs should mention that in which state or UT the fund will be utilized. This is an important point. Then this factor in excluding proselytization in the religious activities, you should remember it. The next is how the Indian origin peoples are eligible, but the people who are not of Indian origin, they are not eligible. Remember this. Then about this thing, that is the slot wise allocation with proper field inquiry after use of 75% of the allocated fund. So these are the important points you should remember about these amendments. Now coming to here, that is here it is written about some violation and revised penalty. So this is not so important, you can just take a look of it, but this is important, that is the rationale behind the amendment. So what is, according to the government, the amendment aims to improve transparency, traceability, and accountability in the use of foreign contributions, strengthen monitoring through purpose and geographic specific registration. So I have told you this in the beginning. Then prevent misuse and diversion of foreign funds, then safeguard national security and public interest. So these are the important points because you should remember for your means answer writing. And the constitutional perspective, see article 25, it guarantees freedom to profess, practice, and propagate religion. And here is an important thing that is written here. So the rule which we saw, that is exclusion of proselytization. So this is basically has been brought because of a Supreme Court order. So what was that order? Now in Rave Staney's laws versus State of Madhya Pradesh 1977, the Supreme Court held that right to propagate religion does not include a fundamental right to convert one another person. So for this exclusion of proselytization had been introduced. Now, concerns is increased compliance requirements may raise administrative costs, particularly for smaller NGOs. Like we have seen that if you are going for additional UTs or states, then you have to bear additional fees, okay, for registration and all. The next is purpose specific and geographic specific approvals could reduce operational flexibility. So you would be limited, the NGOs would be limited to a certain geographic region. Next, restrictions on organizations with foreign nationals in leadership positions may affect internationally governed charitable institutions. So those internationally governed charitable institutions, so in their matter it can be a problem. Then civil society organizations have expressed concerns that tighter regulation could impede humanitarian and development activities if approvals become cumbersome. So of course the same thing, that humanitarian and development activities will be hampered because of these tighter regulations. Okay, so see here, now coming to this table, here it is a background you should remember, that is FCRA 2010. So first it was introduced in 2010, that is organizations receiving foreign contributions must obtain registration or prior permission from central government. Okay, and the rest you can just take a look of it. Okay, the rest we have learned. Now coming to the next article, that is CAG report state finances 2024 to 2025. So here what are the important points we should remember? So the first important point is that all 28 states reported fiscal deficits during 2024 to 2025, and 18 states exceeded the 3% of the GSDP, that is the gross state domestic product fiscal deficit limit recommended by 15th Finance Commission and prescribed under the state FRBM fiscal responsibility and budget management laws. Among the states, Meghalaya recorded the highest fiscal deficit, and it was followed by Nagaland and Sikkim. Okay, so rising public debt is a concern. Okay, the expenditure pattern, you can see it has increased from 22.18 lakh crore to 51.20 lakh crore. Now, what is all about these expenditure patterns? So, basically on welfare and development expenditure, and reflecting increased spending on social sectors and subsidies. Next is the revenue position. So if you see the revenue, then states with revenue deficits are increasingly borrowing to finance current expenditure. So they are borrowing in order to finance the current expenditure. This reduces fiscal flexibility. Then is the committed expenditure remains high. So committed expenditures are those which they have to pay. That is salaries, pensions, interest payments, along with subsidies and grants accounted for over 61%. Now, the high committed expenditure, it leaves limited fiscal space for capital investment and developmental initiatives. Then is subsidy expenditure, which has more than tripled over the last decade. Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Punjab, they emerged as the largest subsidy spending states. And the revenue structure, that is, states' own tax revenue accounted for 50% of the total revenue receipts, and state contributes more than 43% of the state's own tax revenues. The dependence on central transfers, that is, states are dependent on tax devolution from the center and grants in aid. And such dependency affects fiscal autonomy, especially for fiscally weaker states. And here, see, here it has been given, that is indicator and status. So revenue surplus states are total 13 and revenue deficit are 15. Okay, so now coming here. So what are the major concerns highlighted? So the first is fiscal sustainability, that is persistent fiscal deficits, continuous fiscal deficits and rising debt may constrain future developmental expenditure. Fiscal rigidity, that is high committed expenditure. We learn na, committed expenditure means salaries, pensions, interest payments and all. So these are the committed expenditure limits. It limits the ability of states to respond to emerging developmental priorities. Rising subsidy burden, that is increasing subsidies. So we have also seen that there are states which are huge, which are they're in the rising subsidy category. So if not well targeted, they may crowd out the productive capital expenditure. Crowd out means, so the exit of private sector. Okay, so increasing subsidies, if not well targeted, may crowd out productive capital expenditure. Now, borrowing for revenue expenditure, that is several states are increasingly using borrowings to finance routine expenditure instead of creating productive assets, affecting long term fiscal health. So what are the positive trends? Overall expenditure on welfare and development have increased. Some states continue to maintain revenue surpluses despite challenging fiscal conditions, and greater emphasis on public welfare, education, health and infrastructure has contributed to improved social outcomes. And what are the CAG recommendations? Just take a look of it, like strengthen the fiscal discipline, okay, rationalize committed expenditure, enhance revenue mobilization, improve quality of expenditure, improve fiscal transparency. Okay, so remember these major points as it will help in your mains answer writing while writing way forward, that CAG recommendations like strengthening the fiscal deficit, discipline, and rationalizing the committed expenditure and all. Just write these key points. Okay. Now coming to the next article. So Adivasi delisting debate. So what is all about it? Now a renewed debate has emerged over whether scheduled tribe status should continue after conversion to Christianity or Islam. So this is the major thing you should remember from it. Don't go in very detail. Just remember that the major news here is that there is a ongoing debate that whether the scheduled tribe status should continue after conversion to Christianity or Islam. This is a major thing. So first of all, here you can see that here it is given the constitutional position about the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe. So scheduled caste by article 341 and scheduled tribe 342. Now the here important thing is, here it is written that conversion to Christianity or Islam results in loss of SC status. But here there is nothing written about the constitutional provisions that conversion will lead to loss of ST status. So here it is written about that loss of SC status, but here there is nothing written about ST status. So that is a debate here. Now if you see that scheduled castes, they are identified primarily on the basis of historical caste based untouchability, While scheduled tribes, they are recognized based on ethnicity, distinct culture, traditional customs, geographical isolation, and historical marginalization. Okay, and here the same thing you can see. So, as we read above, that Article 342 contains no religious qualification. Any move to delist converted tribals would likely require legislative or constitutional changes and would invite judicial scrutiny. Okay, so here the same thing has been written. See that Article 342, here nothing qualification has been mentioned that you should be from this religion and all, then only you will get the ST status. So, no, nothing has been mentioned. And the same thing is the debate. Okay, so this is the only thing you should remember. And here you can see that the significance is it raises important questions about the basis of affirmative action for tribal communities, has implications for reservation policy, census classification, and tribal self identification, and what is the way forward. That is, ensure that any policy decision is guided by constitutional principles and empirical evidence. Promote extensive consultation with tribal communities before considering changes to ST status. Address the socio-economic challenges faced by all the tribal communities irrespective of religion. Consider the long pending demand for a separate Sarna religious code. So we will be covering this now. Then strengthening the implementation of tribal welfare laws like Forest Rights Act, PESA Act 1996 to address substantive issues of land, livelihood and self-governance. So the major things you should remember from the way forward is the first point is while making the policy decisions, we should take the constitutional principles and empirical evidence into account. The second, you should consider that extensive consultation with the tribal communities. There should be constant consultation, talks with the tribal communities about their issues and all. The next is we should address the socio-economic challenges and we should strengthen the tribal welfare laws, that is Forest Right Act and PESA Act. Okay. So this Sarna, what is the Sarna? Now Sarna is a traditional indigenous faith followed by many tribal communities in Jharkhand and neighboring states. Remember it, in Jharkhand and neighboring states. So this can come in prelims exam. That is Sarna tribe from which region? Okay. So it is Jharkhand. Many Adivasi organizations demand a separate Sarna religious code in the census instead of classifying followers as Hindus under others. They argue that recognizing Sarna would preserve tribal identity, improve demographic accuracy, protect indigenous cultural traditions. So this is the main thing. So here it is written that we should consider, at least consider, the long pending demand for a separate Sarna religious code. Okay. So this is all about this article, that you should remember that the major things is under Article 341, ST is under Article 342. 342 does not mention any qualification that you should be from this religion, then only will be granted the ST status. So no constitutional provision states that conversion leads to the loss of the state ST status. Okay, so this is all about the Adivasi delisting debate. Okay, and yeah, the major you can remember this, that what is delisting, the definition, that it refers to the demand that tribal persons who convert to Christianity or Islam should cease to enjoy the constitutional benefits available to scheduled tribes. Okay, so this is the definition. It can help you while writing the introduction and all in your answer writing. Okay, so the next news is Kharif preparedness amid El Nino. So we all know that this year is the year of El Nino. Okay, and of course it is a weather phenomena. And as here it is written, see that the southwest monsoon is significantly delayed this year, and the rainfall so far has been around 43% below the normal, and this could directly affect kharif crops, particularly in rain-fed regions. So now what are the major things you should learn from this article? So first, what steps should be taken? Like coverage should be expanded under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So this Yojana, it ensures insurance compensation. So this is a very important scheme, and there should be enough coverage under this. That is in potential affected districts to ensure timely compensation in cases of crop losses. The next is Kishan credit card should be to the eligible farmers. that is so that they have adequate resources to deal with seed losses, resowing, and other agricultural investments. So these two, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana and Kishan credit cards, just remember these. Okay, you can write in your answer to just make it little better. Next, coordination and monitoring, that is, there should be coordination at center, state, district, block, and all level, and real time data sharing mechanisms and all. Then El Nino monitoring cell and crop weather watch group. So all this you can write in your way forward. Just remember that these two schemes and coordination and monitoring. Okay, so you can ignore the background noise. Okay, and yeah, so here see this table. So water conservation and irrigation management. So crop here it is written that there should be enough water conservation and harvesting work under Manrega, okay, or the forthcoming programs like we all know about VBG Ramji bill. And there should be increase in water conservation and harvesting works, okay, and this will help in employment generation and also in enhancement of water storage capacity, both. Okay, the next is crop store strategy. So here the major is we should promote, the government should promote short duration crop varieties, okay, that will deliver higher yields with low water requirements. Then crop diversification, then intercropping and mixed farming practices, and emphasis on pulses, millets, and oilseeds which require limited moisture conditions. Okay, and the next is advanced in arrangement of inputs, that is the major from this advanced arrangement of inputs is that sowing should be undertaken only after cumulative rainfall of 75 to 100 mm and adequate soil moisture. So premature sowing should be avoided, that is after little rainfall sowing is avoided as it has the risk of seed damage and resowing. Next, scientific advisory and time, that is timely information and scientific guidance, and livestock and fodder management, that is about the advanced supply plans and how to prevent black marketing and hoarding of fodder and all, to work on the supply chains. Okay, so these factors, that is the storage and all, these factors should be taken into account. So this is all about this article. Okay, now so the next article is rupee slides down. So here the important points I have marked it. Just read this much, it will be enough. So since 1993, India has had a market determined exchange rate system. In practice, that this is a managed float. So managed floating exchange rate. So India has managed floating exchange rate. Okay, not a fixed, not a completely flexible. It is a managed. Okay, the next is the value of the rupee is largely determined by, you should know these points, that is which factor determines the value of the rupees. It can come in your prelims, like demand and supply of foreign exchange, international capital flows, trade balance, inflation and interest rate differentials, market expectations, and investor confidence. The next is what are the factors causing pressure on rupee. So this is your main specific fact. The first is oil. So first is India's oil imports, it accounts for 90%. Okay, and the pressure on it has pressure on current account. So our current account grows, our deficit grows. Now it weakens the rupee because there is a high need of dollar while buying oil. The same in the case of gold, there is a high need of dollar. Okay, the next is here we can see that capital outflow, that is amid global uncertainty, foreign investors, they have withdrawn money from Indian equity markets. Okay, and the next is dollar system, that is dollar remains the center of the global finance, that is world's principal reserve currency. And when the US reserve Federal Reserve, it increases the interest rates, or during periods of global uncertainty, global investors, they become risk averse and capital flows to US assets. Okay, this strengthens the dollar globally. The next is market sentiment and speculation. That is, expectations of further depreciation may encourage importers to purchase dollars in advance. So the importers, they expect that okay, rupees will depreciate more, and with the expectation or the speculative behavior, they used to buy the dollars, that is purchase dollars in advance. And exporters, they used to delay converting the export proceeds into rupees, and this further leads to depreciation of the rupees. Okay, so just remember the major points, that is oil imports, gold imports, and the global uncertainty which leads to capital outflow. Then the trust in the dollar system, it also leads to the capital outflow, and the market sentiment and speculation. These are the major points. Just remember it. The next is way ahead. So what are the way ahead? So the rupee cannot be stabilized by the RBI alone. It needs to be supported by a stronger production base. And India needs to reduce oil dependence, expand its domestic energy buffers, encourage gold recycling, deepen financial savings, rise merchandise export capacity, reduce avoidable imports, and attract stable long-term capital, that is FDI. Okay, and the rupee decline is therefore neither a failure nor something entirely harmless. It is a warning. Consider it as a warning. Okay, an adjustment and a test. The challenge is not to prevent every decline, but to ensure the fall does not become a fracture, and to build robust economic foundations. Now, this is all about this article. You should remember what is the way ahead. That is, we should boost our domestic production. We should need a supportive, stronger production base, and how to increase the. We should increase the FDI, that is long term capital. Okay, and we should take it as a warning. So these all are the major takeaways. And see here in this box, what are the positive implication? So when rupee declines, we can say that Indian exports are becoming cheaper. But still, it is not good for India, as India is a import dominant country. So we are majorly dominant, dependent on imports. Okay, so this will not benefit India, as imports are becoming costlier. Now, this rupee value of remittances, it also help or is beneficial in while receiving the remittances. And the negative implications are the weaker rupee, it makes imports more expensive, like crude oil, natural gas, fertilizers, edible oils, electronics, industrial machinery, all becomes expensive. Okay, external debt denominated in foreign currencies, it increases because borrowers require more rupee to repay the same amount of foreign debt. Okay, now coming to the next article, POK protests. So I will say, just remember one major thing from this article, that is Mangla Dam. It is being built on the Jhelum River. Okay, so this is the major takeaway from this article. Now, if you want, you can take a look of it, but nothing major important in this article. So, but yeah, you could just remember this conclusion, or just take a look of it. Like, it will help in your creative analysis. So POK's unrest is inevitable consequence of occupation without representation, a region exploited for its resources, denied its political voice, and governed by a distant power's interest. You should remember, if possible, remember this. Now the US Iran agreement. Now what is important in this? So the major point to remember in this is, first is this Dardanelles Strait. So between which sea is this located? So between the Aegean Sea and the Sea of Marmara, the Dardanelles Strait is located. The next is 20 to 25% of the global oil and 20% of global gas, it passes through Hormuz. So the importance of Strait of Hormuz, you should remember it. It is very important and it can come in this means. So this fact you can state that 20 to 25% of global oil and 20% of global gas, it passes through Hormuz. Okay. And nothing major is this in this article. These two important points, Dardanelles Strait and the Strait of Hormuz importance. And of course, some important points or takeaway for your conclusions and all, that Here you can see that Iran emerges diplomatically empowered, economically recovering, and military unstrained in its missile and proxy capabilities. So, how there is potential reordering of West Asia's geopolitical architecture. Next is whether this fragile opening becomes a lasting realignment. And uh, just this much. Okay, so now coming to Venezuela's acting president visit to India. So the major takeaways from this article, so whole article also not important. So no formal agreements but laid the foundation for cooperation in energy, and these all you can remember that. Okay, foundation, when you see that there is an agreement, there will be a foundation for everything. There is energy, mining, technology, pharmaceuticals, transportation, animal husbandry, and all. So the major thing, first of all, no formal agreement. Remember it, no formal agreement. So there is nothing to remember, but you should know this as if you got selected in your interview and all. So here, remember that Rubio framed Venezuela crude oil and American energy supplies together as solutions to India's future energy needs. However, critics questioned whether India's energy security decisions are being shaped in Washington, as this announcement has came not from New Delhi, not from Caracas, but from Washington. Okay, so it is all about, is India's energy security decisions being shaped by Washington? Okay, and is India's future decided by Venezuela's crude oil and American energy supplies? So this is the question in this article. The next is beyond oil. What is Venezuela rich in? So gold, diamonds, critical minerals, and all. This is just a fact. So the question which we saw there, now the let's see its answer. So we can refer to the conclusion here. That is, India's renewed engagement with Venezuela reflects a genuine and urgent energy diversification imperative, amplified by Russian crude pressure, the Hormuz crisis, the need for critical minerals. But the US shadow over the visit, Venezuela's political fragility and unresolved financial dues mean India must pursue this relationship with both strategic intent and strategic caution. So we should ensure strategic intent and caution. Okay. And yes, there is a need for diversification in our relations and ties because of the Hormuz crisis and for the need of critical minerals. The next article is India France relation. Now, what is important from this? So, I have already marked it. See, France is currently India's third largest trading partner in EU after Netherlands and Germany. And there is an agreement to establish a national center of excellence for skilling in aeronautics in Kanpur, and supporting India's aerospace manufacturing ecosystem. The next is a Bharat Innovates. So this is an jointly agreement in between France and India about how bringing together over 120 Indian companies and startups with French and global business leaders. Next, to the French universities to establish campus in India. Okay. Now, why France is India's most trusted Western partner? As France's tradition of strategic autonomy with the Western Alliance aligns with India's own multi alignment foreign policy. France does not lecture India on domestic matters, a sharp contrast to many Western partners. It supported India during Pokhran too. The next is it has never used bilateral ties as a leverage for political pressure, and it has consistently championed India's voice in global forums. Okay, that is recognizing India's role as a leading voice of the global south. The next is the visit of President of Myanmar to India. The major things from here is, first, with Myanmar India. So we know that in Myanmar there was military chaos going on. Okay, and military coup was there. So now currently the president has visited India, and the major things between India and Myanmar is, first is the Kaladan multimodal project. This is the main that is linking Mizoram to Myanmar Sitwe port. The next is India Myanmar Thailand trilateral highway that is connecting India to Southeast Asia over land. Okay. The next is their rupee and kyat settlement mechanism. Okay. And anything important. Then the Mekong Ganga ICCR scholarships. It is for the Myanmar students. Okay. and this ensures the education and people to people ties. Okay, and this much is for Myanmar and India's relation, that is Kaladan multimodal transit transport project. Then India Myanmar Thailand trilateral highway. Then is rupee kath settlement mechanism. Then is education people to people ties, like example is Mekong Kanga ICCR scholarships. Now, so India Myanmar's policy is not about comfort, it about calculus. So we have to take a calculative decision. So we are showing here that the New Delhi's engagement with Myanmar junta is driven by strategic pragmatism rather than ideological alignment. By maintaining ties, India actively counters China's growing footprint and prevents Beijing from establishing an unchallenged monopoly. So, yes, it is about a military government, but it is about what is the need of engaging with the government. Okay. The next is India and Oman SEPA. That is, what is SEPA? The Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So here the major point is, first, with which countries we have recently signed SEPA. That is UAE, Australia, then EFTA. Okay. Then that is the European Free Trade Agreement, and UK, then New Zealand, then EU. Okay. So you have to remember these. Yes, you have to remember these. Okay. Remember these countries' name, which with whom we have recently signed the SEPA. Now, what is important in this? So the important point is Oman is now a logistic and strategic hub, and its three key ports. It has three key ports, that is Sohar, Duk, and Salala. Okay, so these are developing and will serve as important industrial and logistic and strategic hub. The next important is Oman is a gateway, we can say, to the GCC region, that is Gulf Council Cooperation region and East Africa region. So it is an important region, and we should also see that the China factor, that is how to count China's growing influence in the regions nearby India and India's. Okay, so now the Oman SEPA is history meeting opportunity, one of the world's oldest bilateral maritime relationships reimagined for the 21st century, and with sweeping tariff liberalization, regulatory facilitation, services commitments, and Oman's strategic location as a hub connecting Gulf, Indian Ocean, and East Africa, the agreement offers Indian exporters an unprecedented gateway. Its true worth will be measured not in text, but in how boldly Indian business choose to walk through the door it has opened. Okay, so major is this about these three key ports and how it is going to serve as a logistic and strategic hub and a gateway to GCC region and East Africa. The next is G7 summit. So what are the major important things we should remember? First is this G7 is an informal grouping. Okay, and it was established in 1975. Okay, the next is we have to remember from here is it is about 10% of world population and 43% of global nominal GDP. Remember it. Okay, and what are the countries? That is Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, US, okay, and EU. Okay, okay, so I have written about its synonym, that is JUICE GF. So here J is Japan, U is US, I is Italy, C is Canada, E is England, that is UK, G is Germany, and F is France. So EU non-enumerated, that is complete EU we can not, it is not included. Okay, so now this is all about G7, that is informal grouping, and JUICE GF, remember it, that is Japan, US, Italy, Canada, UK, Germany, France, and 10% of world population and 43% of global nominal GDP. The next is India and G7 summit 2026. So here PM Modi attended the outreach session and he advocated for global south and inclusive global governance. So this is the major important, that India acts as a leader for global south, okay, and inclusive global governance. So this is about all this article, and our editor's cut section has been completed. So this has been done. So in the next lecture, we will be dealing with maps, places and news and further on. Thank you for this lecture.